Superhero movies rely on computer-generated imagery to provide some of their more fantastical moments, from Spider-Man swinging across New York to Superman soaring into space. But its appropriate use is a fine art. As we all know, with great power comes great responsibility. When this technology is used appropriately, which often means sparingly or in conjunction with practical effects, it can be mind-blowing. However, botched CGI jobs have the potential to turn what should have been an epic spectacle into the butt of 1,000 internet forum jokes. Hello, Justice League! Deadpool definitely had a point when he insisted his costume not be animated. I'm Adam Wilborn from Whatculture, and these are 10 terrible CGI moments in huge comic book movies. Number 10. Literally any scene featuring Hulk, Ang Lee's the Hulk. In fairness to the movie, its attempts to create a digital green Goliath were laudable enough back in the day, but just like Jules, they haven't aged well, since technology moved on leaps and bounds in the ensuing years. This was just 12 months on from the infamous Scorpion King. Ugh. Watching the Hulk today, it's difficult to suspend your disbelief and convince yourself there's a tangible character smashing things up and tossing tanks around. It just looks like Eric Banner's face has been copied and pasted onto a mass of green plastic. At least the Avengers movies have since restored some of Bruce Banner's street cred. Number 9. Peter's rooftop run, Spider-Man. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man got a lot of things right, with its faithful portrayal of key characters and emotive story, but in hindsight, special effects were not one of them. Or that whole emo bit in the third one either. Any scene featuring the Green Goblin is a killer example, but perhaps the worst offender is Peter Parker's rooftop run, which comes right after he discovers his powers during the movie's first act. The camera pans back to show a computerized version of the fledgling hero leaping between buildings, and it's about as convincing as the gopher from the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It looks like Raimi ran out of budget, so instead spliced footage from a PlayStation 2 game in to bridge the gap between scenes. At least the Go Web Go sequence, which follows, made the fans laugh out loud for the right reasons.
Fly!
Number 8. Incubus's big reveal, Suicide Squad. F*** me. This film. When Incubus was revealed as Suicide Squad's big bad, he looked like he'd arrived straight off the set of Brendan Fraser's Mummy series, a mess of special effects the movie's creative team were ordered to whip up on an impossible deadline. But this can't have been the case, since he appeared briefly in some of the trailer footage. God, remember when we thought this movie was going to be good? Number 7. Reed Richards turns into Wolverine. Fantastic Four. Cringeworthy CGI seems to be a running theme among Marvel's first family, but this one is proper embarrassing. During what's supposed to be a tender moment between Reed Richards and Sue Storm, Mr. Fantastic reveals a superpower nobody knew he had: the ability to transform into the most unconvincing digital Wolverine ever. Not only does he look stupid and drag two of the classic Marvel heroes through the mud in the process, the effect looks like it was created using a bad Snapchat filter. When Josh Trank's reviled Fantastic Four reboot arrived in 2015, the effects weren't much better, but there's nothing in there as cheesy as this. Number 6. Wolverine's Claw Pop, X-Men Origins, Wolverine. If Reed Richards isn't humiliating Wolverine with bad CGI, he's doing it to himself. Logan's claws look utterly dreadful throughout X-Men Origins Wolverine, as though the adamantium spikes were photoshopped in afterwards. Honestly, I've seen Wolverine Halloween costumes with them made out of tinfoil that look more convincing. The most insulting thing about this is that 3 X-Men movies arrived before this prequel, and Wolvie's claws looked fine in them, created using practical props. But somebody at Fox clearly thought it was a good idea to take a step backwards and make them look all computerized. Number 5. Frost's regeneration, Blade. Given how many horrible examples of CGI effects there are from the 2000s, what hope did Blade have of producing some convincing ones back in 1998? The action is bombastic enough throughout Wesley Snipes' vampire extermination fest to ignore those bad guys exploding into a mess of computerized sparks, though blissful ignorance is almost impossible during the final act. When Blade locks horns with Deacon Frost, the vampire is infused with the power of the ancient blood god La Magra, but the movie didn't quite have the special effects capability to portray said powers on screen. When the hero slices his opponent clean in two, his body magically reforms itself while blocky tendrils of computerized blood fill the arena. And don't get me started on when he regrows a hand. Honestly, it makes Samuel L. Jackson's death scene from Deep Blue Sea look like a work of digitized art. Number 4. Daredevil vs. Bullseye. Daredevil. During the battle with Bullseye, the action takes the combatants to the upper reaches of a huge pipe organ where they continue to slug it out. Except it's not actually them, of course. Spoilers. It's a pair of computerized doubles. Digital stunt dummies are all well and good if you have the budget to create them convincingly. But Daredevil most certainly did not. Even by 2003 standards, it's difficult to imagine audiences buying this sequence, which somehow avoided joining the vast amount of footage that was omitted from Daredevil's cinematic cut. Number 3. Literally any scene where Hal Jordan is suited up. Green Lantern. Ryan Reynolds' digital costume in 2011's Green Lantern was so bad that Deadpool was still ripping on it 5 years later.
And please don't make the super suit green. Or animated.
The problem with Hal Jordan's all-CG getup is that it's the epitome of cheap. To say it looks like it was photoshopped onto his body is an insult to a graphics package that has been the industry standard for years. If Warner Brothers wanted to skimp on Green Lantern's budget, wouldn't cladding the lead actor in spandex have been a much more effective way to do that? Let's be honest, it's not like it could have looked any worse.
I know, right?
Number 2. The Violator's transformation, Spawn. The Spawn movie was a big deal back in 1997 since it marked the cinematic debut of the best-selling comic book hero outside of Marvel and DC stables. It had a decent budget behind it, an R rating, and could have paved the way for more indie comic adaptations. The CGI effects during the final battle between Spawn and the Violator certainly didn't help its cause. It starts with a crappy digital tentacle shooting from John Leguizamo's hide, and then the transformation really kicks in. In hindsight, it plays like a scene from a bad retro video game without the sense of nostalgia. Number 1. Enter Doomsday, Batman vs. Superman. DC Comics fans waited a long time to see Doomsday make his big screen debut. This is one of the most badass villains in Superman history, a creature who once succeeded in killing the Man of Steel. But, like a bad Tinder date, he arrived in Batman vs. Superman looking nothing like his pictures. He looked more like one of those cave trolls from Lord of the Rings than his comic book counterpart. But that's not even the worst bit. The biggest insult is that Doomsday's CGI doesn't appear to have moved on since 2001's The Fellowship of the Ring. The fans could have forgiven the design deviations from the source material, but there's no excuse for retro special effects in a film with a $300 million budget. Be sad, Affleck. Be very, very sad.
Gosh, can you believe that person said that about that particular video on that entry? I sure can't. But you should like, share and subscribe below anyway. And also, the people who made this video, they're right here. Go follow them and give them some love. Also, there's more content, probably above my head. Check it out. Or don't. 50-50.